Aloha, everybody. Welcome to the Paradise Property Podcast for what are we in? September, almost October of 2024, where we talk about all things living in Hawaii, moving to Hawaii, and most importantly, Hawaii real estate, and in particular, Oahu real estate, which is where I'm located, and Big Island real estate, where my friend and colleague Guy LaGuire, who's going to join me here in a second, is located. The goal is to help educate, inform, inspire, and entertain consumers and realtors, and allows you to make better, more informed decisions. We'll put links in the descriptions below to various topics we talk about. So check some of those out. And you can find me, Scott Startsman, on the web at hiestates.com and search for my YouTube channel at Scott Startsman. So let's go ahead and welcome my guest, my good buddy, friend, and guest, Guy LaGuire from the Big Island. Welcome, Guy. How's it going?
Aloha, Scott. Great to see you again. Glad to be back on the show.
Yeah. How things been? What you been up to?
Well, things are good. I guess if I was to take what I'm kind of up to now is I'm into a little bit of a tiny house situation because eventually I want to move back to Michigan, not permanently, but get some land back there near my sister and do a tiny house thing for, part of the year. So I had the opportunity to do something here. And so I'm kind of now in designing and using some of my experience having lived in Japan to make the most of small spaces. So anyways, that's one of the things I've been up to. I've still been swimming as we last podcast. That's been a central thing for me. And I continue to improve on that. So I've been working on some physical stuff too.
Cool. So the tiny home, is that going to be for Michigan in the middle of the winter?
Not in the middle of the winter, I can tell you that. It's going to be for about this time of year. My sister has like 5 acres. You can buy 5 acres in Michigan, 5 miles from 10 different lakes or whatever for, $50,000, and you put a tiny house on it and your mortgage payment is, a dinner at the Canoe House restaurant here.
So interesting question real quick. So if you're spending, say, $50,000 in Hawaii, there's actually a minimum mortgage amount that you have to have. And I think it's close to 100 or 100 grand in order for you to be able to get a mortgage. I'm wondering if that's different in other states.
I would guess it's different. I don't know exactly in Michigan because the prices are less. You can buy. They bought their house on 3 or 4 acres for $90,000, and they have a mortgage. So, yeah. Anyway,
interesting concept. Interesting concept here in Hawaii. The bank says we'll give you a loan, but you got to have an X amount minimum, otherwise you're not worth our time.
Well, I guess from a lending perspective, I can understand that. For me right now, it's an experiment of what I would be doing back in Michigan. So the opportunity came up.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. When are you looking to break ground or complete it at some point?
Well, no, here's the thing is that I basically have a situation where somebody has built a tiny space and I am, renting that space. Because I saw the opportunity. It's like, I don't want to be in that. I thought, hey, this is my perfect opportunity to practice, get the idea of what I want to do the day I get that place back in Michigan. So I'm bunking up some beds and doing things like that, making the most of space, which I had to do when I lived in Japan a long time ago. So I have a little bit of experience at it. So I don't have to sink a lot of my money into it. So that's good.
Nice.
Yeah. Tiny house Hawaii, tiny house Michigan, big price difference.
Yeah, and the two extremes. Well, I was on Kauai recently. Took a little trip over their vacation, girlfriend's birthday, and to celebrate. And we stayed in Princeville. And man, I always forget how dramatically beautiful the extremes are. Kauai has. And then so we did the Kalalau Trail, some hiking there, and hung out in Honolulu Bay up on Princeville. And it was it's a stunning location. Honolulu Bay is just massive, and it was cool because actually the first winter swell of the season came through, so we were sitting up having cocktails at one hotel, looking over the bay at sunset, So you got Bali High in the background, and then you see the lines coming into the bay. Is really neat. I got to do a little body surfing, get in the ocean, and then I hung out with the oceanfront Sotheby's group over there. They had me at their company meeting, which was nice to interact and get to know some of them as well. So it was good. It was fun.
Good. Yeah, it's good to hear. Well, it's nice, even though like going from island to island is just one of those things. It's fun to do. I mean, the islands are different in their own way, and so good. All right.
Well, let's get into things. You want to introduce the first one?
Well, yeah, let's jump right in here. We are going to basically go to the market meteorologist, the latest news affecting the economy and the real estate market in the state of Hawaii. Obviously, those we can cover some of the things. There are a multitude of things, but yeah, give us the latest, Scott.
Yeah, so the first bit of news, I mean, the U.S. It was just announced that the Federal Reserve slashed interest rates by 0.5 point in its first cut since 2020. So, there was enough economic news that out there that things were inflation was coming down, the economy was softening enough, especially on the job market side, and the Fed said, okay, now's the time. We need to start cutting rates. The question was it going to be a 1/4 point or a 0.5 point rate cut? It ended up being a half point rate cut, which was pretty significant news and a good, strong, positive statement for moving forward in interest rates coming down, which is great because we started to see that already in mortgage interest rates, but that ended up moving things at that standpoint. It just gives positive economic news, positive news to consumers that, okay, rates are going to start coming down, which should help ease a little bit on the burden, for people and make housing more affordable as mortgage interest rates come down as well.
Yeah, well, and we discussed that a little bit beforehand, the fact that, they come up with these headlines in the news, and being only a journalism major by education, I look at some of these, headlines like, interest rates plunge, or, interest rates are slashed. And it seems like, wow, they're still a lot higher than they were. But as we said, it is a positive sign, and we needed one. So,
yep. The light's at the end of the tunnel from an inflationary standpoint. And what we get into from that is mortgage rates dropped to the lowest level since April 2023. And you talked about this just a second ago. Yes, rates are coming down. Slash is kind of an extreme term that was taken from the headline. And the reality is mortgage rates aren't, the Fed announcing isn't what drives the mortgage rates lower. It was all the economic news that came out prior to that, and mortgage interest rates started to drop already. So by the time the Fed announced, interest rates didn't do anything. They actually didn't change. So they're down in about the 6.5% range right now, down from over 8% last year. So we're moving in the right direction. But rates are still high. But the interesting thing is, if you wait too long for rates to come down, there's going to be way more buyers in the market. You're going to be competing with a lot of people. So
exactly. So the market gets opened up again. It's a fine line between being able to afford a mortgage and not. So for it to be, yeah.
Well, the funny thing to me, so if the savvy buyers, the savvy investors either already moved into the market when rates were high, or they're moving in now, and a little bit of the interesting component, I mean, it's, when do you want to buy a home, right? When there's a lot of people in the market and you're having more or less, you can't negotiate, or do you want fewer people in the market? You want a lower price. You want to be able to negotiate. Well, when rates got higher, you had fewer people in the market. You had softer prices. You had sellers being more willing to negotiate. So that's the time you really want to buy and get in. As rates come down, you're going to have more buyers move into the market, and prices are going to go up, and you're going to have less ability to negotiate. You're going to have to take some of their terms or waive contingencies, things like that. So, rates coming down is going to make the mortgage payment more affordable. It's going to make the price more expensive.
Right, right. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, if you will. You know, it's
Yeah.
got it's but as we said, it's a welcome step in the right direction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny, it's herd mentality. I talk about this. So back during the pandemic, my craziest offer situation I had during the pandemic was $450,000 over asking price, seller to stay in the home for free for 2 weeks after closing, no inspection period, waive the appraisal component. In other words, if it didn't appraise, they'd bring in the cash to make the deal. And we still didn't get the property, right? Everyone's running check in hand, willing to get rid of all contingencies, going over asking because of herd mentality. It's like, I got to get in there as a lot of people. Then the opposite happens when the market gets slow. Well, nobody else is buying, so why should I buy? Which is exactly the time you want to buy, right? That's when
Right.
things are softest and you have the most
It,
most
it
negotiation power.
it's a lot better when you're the one making an offer, or maybe one out of three people instead of one out of 30 or 40
Or,
parties.
I mean, there's plenty now that I'm not haven't competed on that
You're
we
not
put in
competing on.
offers, and
Yeah.
you can start dictating some of your own terms and more flexible pricing.
Well, it's good to know that that's happening, you know, because I mean, we over the years we talk about a buyer's market or a seller's market, and well, hopefully we're going to find that balance again. So,
Yep.
and moving in that direction.
Yep. Let's move on
Uh,
to the next topic.
yeah, I think this is a cool one. I mean, I'll let you run with this, but obviously, Amazon. Gosh, if you don't have a membership, then you probably have a friend that has one that you ask all the time to order things. But yeah, new distribution facility on Oahu.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a significant game changer in a lot of ways, but they were having some difficulties getting off the ground. They were having some logistics issues. The distribution center was finished probably a couple of months ago, but like I said, they were having some issues. In the last 3 days, I've seen a number of Amazon Prime delivery vans in the neighborhood moving around. So they're starting to get the kinks worked out. And it's interesting because if you look on Amazon, I don't know how many times, whether it's Home Depot, Lowe's, Amazon, different places, you go to order a product and it says, oh, not available in Hawaii, not available in Alaska. And so this should help change some of that. But we also have a lag time. I mean, I ordered something from Amazon 2 weeks ago to send to my buddy in San Diego, and the time frame for delivery was less than 24 hours. Whereas I'm like, okay, I want to order another product to send to me. And it was like, oh, it'll be there in 6 to 7 days, which is a funny concept. So this should not only open up some of the product options here in Hawaii, but it should also help speed up the delivery time frame, you would hope, because if they got a distribution center here, it should help.
Right. And for Amazon, that was one of the big attractions, is that you could order something and get it quickly. Now, we're out in the middle of the Pacific, and obviously that creates issues. But
Yep.
hopefully we'll clear some of that up, because I put in orders that have taken more than 2 weeks to get
Yep.
certain things. And so anyways, yeah, that's good news. That's good news. Well,
now the cons to that though are, okay, now how does the small mom and pop compete, and what does that do to the local mom and pop here on the island? Because the interesting thing is my client runs the Costco down in Waialae. That is the number one grossing Costco in the country, right?
wow.
What else was it? So, there's a couple of different store. Oh, the Victoria's Secret at Ala Moana is one of the top grossing Victoria's Secrets in Victoria's Secret in their collection. So it's interesting. Hawaii actually has some purchasing power and strength in certain different, retail outlets.
Yeah. And Ala Moana Center being a huge, destination for shoppers as well. But, I mean, it depends on what you're buying, of course. I know you can get anything on Amazon and groceries, whatever. But, there just still is that thing. People are always going to go to Costco. That's just going to happen. But agreed. The mom and pop shops, we'll have to see what happens.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, let's move on. Okay. So Hawaii has yet to recover to pre-pandemic job numbers. I'm going to let you cover the job numbers part of it, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more. I think still exists. Go ahead about the job numbers.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I've seen it. Like I've seen and felt it. In other words, every restaurant I go to, like restaurants are actually closing earlier than they used to prior to pre-pandemic. They're not open as late. Some of them aren't open for lunch. Diamond Head Grill, which is right in my neighborhood, cut out the breakfast component. So there's not as many people willing to take the jobs that are available. And part of that was when you look through the article, it said part of that was a out migration to the mainland, a cost of living component here in Hawaii, which is an issue. And then the other part of it, New York Times had done an article, which was interesting, that a lot of the baby boomer generation decided to retire early or retire during that time during the pandemic rather than continue to work. So you lost people in that capacity. You have an outflux of people. But almost every single restaurant that I've been to is short staffed. They're all looking to hire. And this article, more or less explains some of hey, we haven't caught up with the pre-pandemic numbers. We're still not back from an employment standpoint, number of workers wise.
Yeah, and we see the same thing here, the island of Hawaii, the Big Island, shortage in labor. People, what you talk to them at hotels and stuff. Yeah, the service is not quite, what it used to be, whatever. And so there is, oddly enough, after several years, there still is some post-pandemic hangover, if you will, and also some things that have changed that are really going to just be changed forever. I talk to more people that say, hey, we don't dine out anymore. We get takeout almost exclusively, and what does that do for the waiter or waitresses, right? So,
okay. Here's my question for you. When you go to do takeout now, there's a tip component. They added that in during the pandemic, right? You never used to tip on takeout. Now almost every restaurant has tip on the takeout. Okay, you're not sitting down at a table, so you're not getting served. What that tipping component didn't go away after the pandemic. So what is the correct percentage and what is the proper etiquette for tipping on takeout?
Well, that's a good question. But when I walked in my Napa Auto Parts the other day to get a new battery, there's a tip jar on the counter. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, that's the truth. You're paying tips. I probably mentioned this on a previous podcast, but you know what tips is an acronym for, right?
What's that?
To ensure prompt service. You would walk in years ago, you'd walk in, you'd hand the maitre d' $100 and say, we want a really good table. And guess what? You got a really good table. So the concept of tips, but really what I see is it's people going, we need the money, and
well, it's interesting because minimum wage went up. Minimum wage went up significantly. So, I mean, even takeout the other night for three of us was about $120. And I'm like, wow, man, for takeout, that's, that's not an insane, that's $40 a person you're paying for takeout, right?
How was the Big Mac? Okay. Well, and so, and I'm sure across the country, but just things that change, people working remotely, you get in the habit of doing takeout and knowing that you can go home, the food's still warm, so that's just one of the many things that remains unchanged and may well do that, because dining out is an experience.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, you sit down, you're with friends and you have great conversations. Yeah. Or you all sit there and look at your phones, which I still see in restaurants, which amazes me. People on vacation sitting in some of the finest restaurants in the world, looking at their phones. But that's just the day and age we live in. I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent there.
Yeah.
So we still suffer a little bit from those pandemic hangovers. Let's jump to the next topic here.
Yeah, positive news. Honolulu named most desirable place to live for the second year in a row. I have a hard time arguing with this. I love living here. I mean, the idea that I can go outdoors every day, warm weather all year round, go run around Diamond Head, go surf, go body surf, go swim in the ocean, get in the ocean, and just the natural beauty. I mean, there's not a single day that I don't at least take a pause for a moment to pay attention to what's going on around me, because
Oh,
there's an extreme beauty here, and it's
and,
and a
and
lifestyle.
you've got to do that. And a little play on words here, but it says Honolulu, and you see in the background there are the turtles swimming there. The actual name of a turtle in Hawaiian is Honu, right? Which is was an endangered species, but they're plentiful now. I agree, though. You have got to get out and you have got to enjoy what's here on the island. I mean that
Yeah.
we fish. If I'm not in the ocean at least once a week, I forget that I live in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So I mean, I swim in a pool, I swim a little bit in the ocean, but we do a sunset at Waialae Ave or Mauna Lani at least once a week with myself and my son and his kids and my daughter-in-law. And I don't always get to join them, but man, it is such a healing thing for your soul. And it reminds you that you live in Hawaii. I mean, you don't just want to be going back and forth to work. You might as well be, in Benzonia, Michigan, where my dad grew up, and
Yeah.
freezing your butt off in the winter. So
what is it about the lifestyle in Hawaii that you would say it makes it so great for you?
oh, if I have to put it's the ocean. I mean, the ocean to me, you are getting in a
Healer.
healing, natural healing. Oh my God, what a great feeling! You float in the water. It's something about the salt water, the buoyancy, the warmth. It's warm. That would be the number one thing. But you can go up the mountain and be in greenery and farmland and all that kind of stuff. And also in the distance, as you're in the ocean, you can see the mountains of Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa on my island, and it's just like, oh my God, does it get any better than this? So
Yeah, part of it for me is a laid back lifestyle as well. Like the outdoors, nature, being in nature, there's extreme beauty here from a nature standpoint. So whether it's hikes, like I can go 5 minutes up the hill to top of the St. Louis Heights where there's a park there, and all of a sudden I'm hiking out in the middle of the woods and I can go all the way up to the top of the Ko'olaus, right? So even living in the urban area here in Honolulu, I have the extreme beauty and the ability to get out and be in a quiet zone almost immediately. And that's going up into the mountains. I'm 5-minute drive down to Kapiolani Park. I do workouts in Kapiolani Park. It's 300 acres. It's huge. I got Diamond Head as my view right there, and I'm working out at the pull-up bars. Or I go jump in the ocean and I do a swim between Kaimana, the natatorium and Queens Beach Jetty. I go back and forth. It ends up being about half a mile. And I feel totally refreshed. I mean, I've been jamming on that construction project trying to finish this renovation, and Ray's been working his tail off 6 days a week, 11, 12-hour days. I said, Ray, let's take a break this morning. Let's go to Makapu'u. We got in the truck, drove to Makapu'u. It's this beautiful, come around the corner, you could see Molokai off in the distance. And then you come over the hill, you have Rabbit Island, and we went body surfing. That was his first time body surfing. He was charging. He was going for it. He didn't care. Like, he was throwing caution to the wind. But we came out after about 30 minutes. We just needed 30 minutes. We both felt refreshed. And I looked at him. His eyes were beet red. And I go, why are your eyes red? Are you opening your eyes underwater? He goes, oh, yeah. I was totally irritated.
you need to buy that guy a pair of swim goggles. But okay, so back to the subject of Honolulu being the most desirable place.
Yep.
Why Honolulu? I mean,
well, I think you get, it's a part of the reason why I moved over here from the Big Island. I think you get the best of both worlds. In other words, you get the city, you get the world-class shopping, you get the conveniences right at your fingertips, the great restaurants, you get concerts, you get the hustle and bustle of the city if you want it. Yet, like I said, you could be 5 minutes, you could be 30 minutes, you could be 45 minutes. I mean, it's an hour to the North Shore, right? You can you have the yin and the yang of quiet, peaceful country nature setting, extreme beauty, and, you know, big North Shore surf, South Shore surf. Yet you have all the cosmopolitan components here as well. International airport, if you want to travel somewhere that you can get out of and go to many destinations quickly. So for me, it's that kind of balance of work hard, play hard component, the yin and the yang of busy urban life, and yet you have access to the quiet, peaceful country settings.
Yeah. So if I would just to kind of sum it up, it would be that, I mean, you get that stuff on my island, you get it on Maui, you get it on Kauai. I mean, there is beauty for hikings, the ocean, what kind of whatever you want in terms of that on any of the islands. But if you add the component of the convenience, entertainment, much more shopping, those are the kind of things that kind of put Honolulu over the top as the place to be. Would that be
medical facilities is another one. If you have, like on the outer islands, if you need to see specialists, you're flying over here to Oahu to see them, right? Our
in
trauma
in
centers
most cases
are here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In most cases. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. Let's move on to the next topic.
Cool.
Trending tides, the latest real estate market update, and focusing mostly on Oahu. I'll let you take it from here, Scott.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just touch briefly on it. I do a market stats video every month. I'll put that in the link below as well, along with some of these articles. But right now we're actually trending a little sideways. Rates have started to come down. They're at 6.5%, which is really good, which is the time to get in. I bought in April because I anticipated the interest rates coming down. I figured there's going to be more buyer demand. And so what we're actually, it's interesting because what we're seeing so far this year from still high interest rates, even though we're going to be going lower, is the median price for a single family home on Oahu is $1.122 million this past month. Sales were flat, but year to date prices are up 4.8%. And as rates come down, I expect that price component to accelerate upwards, but we're in a soft spot right now because the election is coming up and most people pump the brakes on their spending or buying big ticket items such as housing. They slow down a little bit waiting for the election to happen. And in the meantime, rates are coming down. So we're still keeping a little bit of that momentum that we've had, but we're not having quite the big increase. We're seeing a little bit of an increase in the buying side, but I think we're going to have to get out past the election for that to happen. I mean, I got 9 listings right now. We just brought one on and the buyer activity, we've had probably 12 showings in 3 days. So it's definitely picked up. And so, I do anticipate with rates continuing to go down, the market to pick up further. And even condos, which we're having an issues with the condo insurance market, prices are up 1.2% year to date. So
it's
prices
amazing.
ain't going down.
Yeah, you would expect, the opposite, especially we talked about that, in the last time about the condo insurance rates. But anyways, okay, so that gives us a little bit of the trending tides. And obviously the tides rise and the tides fall. That's what they do on a daily basis here. And so, the economy does the same thing and the real estate market does the same thing. So let's step into, all right, this is our fun topic, your favorite topic, I think, the Coconut Joe. These are stories from the trenches of interesting things realtors do, the good, the bad, and the ugly, if Clint Eastwood was here, and the inspiring or the oops chronicles or behind the blunders.
Yep.
Sorry.
So this is an interesting one, I'd say, because the NAR lawsuit came out. It's been probably a little more than a month that this whole commission component has come out and now we have to execute. And I've been actually quite shocked at what's gone on in the industry and how, the idea was to decouple the commissions. In other words, listing agent determines listing agent's compensation with their seller and buyer's agent determines buyer's agent compensation with their buyer, and you separate them. That was the whole Department of Justice component. And
Brilliant, by the way. I'm joking. Sorry.
I actually,
I know you have some agreement with that.
I love that component, right? The idea that somebody else is determining my fee, that you and I are going to talk about the services you need that I'm going to do for you, but yet somebody else is telling me how much I get paid for that. That's a stupid concept, right? So I do like it in that sense. You and I talk about our services, and you and I talk about the fee for that service. The question is how does it get paid? And we went from one way of getting paid to four potential options now, right? Either seller pays us directly, we write it into the contract, which is the most common way, which is the most logical way to do it. And until the mortgage industry shifts, that's going to be the predominant way of doing it. The second is seller to credit buyer for the amount, and then the buyer pays it through closing to us, which is still basically the seller paying it, right? And then buyer paying it directly, they bring it in as a closing cost or some combination of the two. The reality is the vehicle, how do we structure that to get paid? It's the purchase contract, and it's the proceeds of the sale that we determine, how it gets paid. And the funny thing is I've seen every different reaction from agents, and most don't know how to pivot. They're still trying to work the same old way that it was, and they're having difficulty pivoting.
Yeah. So what I was gonna again sum up the situation is that even though what was the date? August 18th, was it? That
Something
it
like
actually,
that.
yeah, somewhere around the mid-August where it switched over, and that means that every buyer has to sign a buyer's broker agreement with a buyer's agent, and then the commissions are negotiated, as Scott said, in several different ways. But to sum it up, people are not catching on too quickly. Agents, I'm talking about, right? And we expected that. I mean, it's like, how are people? This is like, yeah, it really confuses. It doesn't necessarily have to be confusing, but it really confuses what was a very simple way we did it before. So let's get into your story that you have for this.
So I actually have two on this. So first of all, I see emails going. So you cannot list if seller is willing to offer compensation, which is just a messed up concept to me to begin with. Offer compensation, you can't put it in the MLS, but you can advertise it in other places. So now what every person is doing is they're going to the title and escrow companies or their own company for these e-blasts. And it's not everybody. There's a lot of agents that have gotten it and understand it, but there's a lot that don't. They go to their title and escrow company to send the e-blast out to all agents. So I get these emails, and in the subject line says, seller willing to compensate X amount, seller willing to pay X amount, seller willing to compensate 1%, seller willing to compensate 2%. And I'm like, I don't understand that concept, because if whatever you and I have agreed to, I'm your buyer's agent, you're the buyer, we have an agreement. You're giving away money on the listing side when you start announcing that. If I'm willing to work with you for $500 and the listing agent is announcing 2.5%, I know there's flexibility in negotiation on that at that point, and I'm going to negotiate it. So you've just cost your seller money. You've left money on the table. The other concept is, okay, you're only offering 1%. We're on a 3% agreement, and you want it built into the contract. You don't want to bring it as a closing cost. Who's the seller to argue with that? Who's the seller to fight on that? And the reason I say that is you focus on the commission, you lose on the net. And where this came out, two instances. One, I submitted and I called the agent, and a lot of this is communication. I said, we're on a, let's just call it 3% buyer agreement. Oh, well, seller's only offering 2.5%. Okay, I don't really care. This is our agreement, right? And the point being was, if you're listed at $500,000 and you're only offering 2.5%, and I brought you $1 million offer, but you're going to pay me 3%, I'm asking, you're telling me you're not going to pay that additional 0.5% for $1 million offer. And the answer is yes, you're going to, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Well, it all comes down to the money. I mean, what the seller's going to look at it and say, what is my net?
Net.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to, and that's the logical part of it. It's just getting to the net is it doesn't have to be complicated, but it's been complicated, and I believe it will be until people catch on a little bit more, in terms of how they're negotiating, and it really, to me now, the negotiation, it's not just about how much you're paying for that property. In the end, that's what the bottom line is. A buyer's going to pay X amount of money, and a seller's going to accept X amount of money. And when you meet, then you've got a deal. And
Yeah.
within that, the seller's agent and the buyer's agent, hopefully being satisfied with the compensation that they are receiving, in the deal. That's the goal. And it's the goal is so
at the end of the day, what I see happening, and I think this is going to be a 1 to 2 year frustration period, and it's going to, and where does it land? It lands on the consumer, because we as realtors got to work through that system. And the reality is if you get solely focused on the compensation portion, you're going to take your eyeball off the net and you're going to lose. And my second story to that is, we had an agent who had an agreement with their client for a certain amount of money, and the seller says, they said, this, we're going to write it into the contract, this is our fee. Okay, they presented it, and they countered back with a lower compensation pay, and the buyer got irritated and got offended and said, I'm not buying the home, and moved on. And so I go back to, if you focus on the commission and you're going to take your eyeball off the net, and if you start negotiating multiple things, you complicate the negotiation process when you have price, and now you've added in, oh, well, we're going to negotiate this compensation thing. And the reality is the buyer and the buyer's agent determine their fee and their services, and it's really not the seller's business. And the listing agents need to be good in the beginning of explaining how this process is going to work and focusing the seller on the net. And if they don't, then we're going to have problems, and the seller is actually probably going to not net as much money. And so what the moral of all this is, we're going to go through disruption for a while people try to figure this out. And the frustrations are going to fall back on the consumer. And it means it's ultra important who you hire to work with, someone that's seasoned and knowledgeable that can help walk through scenarios, so you have a smooth process and you don't make costly mistakes.
A very good synopsis of the situation. All right, let's move on then. Okay, so moving to Hawaii questions answered. Again, this is something that there are a lot of different components to moving to Hawaii. Besides just, I want to be in paradise. We've already talked about some of the daily things you can do, and the blessings of being able to live here in such a natural and beautiful place. But there are other things, and let's jump on to the first question here. What are the key differences between buying a home in Hawaii compared to the mainland?
That's a really good question. There's a ton. I mean, just starting from the simple fact that our construction here is often, in the past, has been different. I mean, nowadays we're all working on the same international building codes that across the country, but the older buildings, we have a lot of single wall construction, which people aren't familiar with. And in doing so, there's a construction component from the 60s and 70s and even into the 80s a little bit that's different than the mainland. And so the types of homes that you may be looking to purchase will be different. Also, our land size here, I mean, we're islands out in the middle of the Pacific. So you're talking about our land size is typically smaller. We're more, especially on Oahu, we're much more of a vertical location, meaning condo high rises and townhomes. So 65% of our housing inventory is either in the form of a high rise condo or a townhouse. So we have limited land. Our lots tend to be smaller, so you're closer to your neighbors. That's one thing to get used to. For condos, our maintenance fees typically are much higher than they are on the mainland. So that's one thing to be aware of and kind of factor in. And then there's the we are a title and escrow state. We're not an attorney state, so attorneys don't get involved. We write the purchase contracts, we structure them. Your earnest money deposit goes to an escrow company and is held. When we go to sign and close, you're signing either with a notary or with the escrow officer who's a notary, and then we close. And then one of the biggest things that's interesting, because it's super anticlimactic, we get towards that closing time frame. You fund basically 3 days, 2 days prior to closing. Escrow, the lender, they make sure all the docs are together, all the funds are in. Then the day before closing, so you've signed already. You usually sign 3 or 4 days prior to closing. Both parties, they're not together, they're separate. You can be anywhere. We even do remote online notaries now where you can be online and sign, which is great. And then once all the funds are in, the next day it goes down to the Bureau of Conveyances, all those documents, and it sits there for a day and it does nothing. And then the next morning, the Bureau records it down at the Bureau of Conveyances. They give the escrow company the info. The escrow company calls us, says we're closed. And then we call our clients, and the clients are like, that's it? And I'm like, yeah, you did all the work like 3 days prior. And it's this anticlimactic ending that most people aren't aware of how the process works. It's different on the mainland.
Yeah, and over the years, we've both seen that, and people say, well, hey, we signed, we're closed, can we get the keys? No, you have to wait till it records with the Bureau of Conveyances, which again transfers title or ownership to the property. Anyways, as we both know, it can be it's one of those small things, but it's a big one that gets misunderstood.
And there's some interesting components to it that a lot of realtors don't think about. But so imagine you sign and fund on a Friday. You put your money in, the lender puts their money into escrow. All the funds are in. We're set to close from a loan amount standpoint. But then we have Saturday and Sunday, and then you have Monday that we got to make sure all the docs are together. They go down to the Bureau of Conveyances for us to record on Tuesday. Well, little does the buyer know they're paying interest on that money that got funded on Friday for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and you don't even own the property yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you remember when because you've been in the industry how many years?
1992, I got my license. So,
oh wow,
do the math. I guess 32 years.
Yeah, 11 years more than me.
30 years. Yeah. Do
you remember when we used to have the ability to do simultaneous closings, or you funded and everything came together, and we could do like special recordings the next day? And before the Bureau,
Scott, I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. So. No, I mean, I remember the old MLS machines that didn't show any pictures. I remember a lot of that stuff. But yeah, it's changed. And a lot of it's certainly changed for the better. But it also is a system where there's multiple people involved in closing that property, the title and escrow. The attorneys are in the background. They may write up the deed, those types of things. So it's not that they're not involved, but they're not involved in the way they are in some other states. But in the end, all of those entities, the realtors, the buyer and seller, the title company, their all goal is to get that property closed. So you've got a lot of people helping you to reach your goal as a seller and your goal as a buyer. And that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. The interesting transactions are the ones where someone has to sell. We're doing what we call a sell buy. You're selling and then buying. And so you get into escrow on the home you're selling, and you get into the escrow on the home that you're buying, contingent on this one selling. And so what's interesting with how the Bureau is set up is once the one you're selling closes, you have to wait like 2 or 3 days for the other one to close. You can't close back to back. And if you have two different escrow companies handling it, you close on this one. Now all those funds have to be transferred to the other escrow company, which delays you even another day. And so even if you're doing sell buy, you've got a gap now that you have to get out of your house, couple of days prior to it closing. It closes, then you still got a couple of day gap before your buy side closes. So you're talking almost a week that you have to figure out some kind of housing component, whether it's a rent back or you move out and go hang out at the hotel for a week to kind of pass time or something else.
Yeah, well, that's definitely in Hawaii. Whether and sometimes you're not buying here. You might be buying on the mainland. Like moving away from Hawaii or selling on the mainland and moving to Hawaii. So it's just one of those things. Great. Let's move on to the next. Yeah.
Yep.
Next question here. How does the climate? This is a good one because you think, yeah, Hawaii's, the climate's perfect. But we have a lot of different climates. I think on the Big Island, we have 11 of the world's 14 climates or something. Something to that. How does the climate and location affect home maintenance in Hawaii? A little bit different than where I grew up in Michigan, where you had to shovel snow out of your driveway. But tell us.
To go back to that, you don't have to winterize that tiny home that you're going to have. Here in Hawaii, you don't have to winterize homes. We don't typically have heaters unless you're up in, say, Waimea. Oahu has very few homes that we don't have the elevation, so we don't have the homes on Oahu that typically have heating systems. So we typically will have air conditioners. I have had a couple of clients that have had fireplaces, but they've never used them. They're actually fully functioning fireplaces, but have never used them because our temperature is moderate all year round and you don't really need it. So there's certain things that you don't have to do. And from an insulation standpoint, I mean, even go back to the construction of homes in the 60s and the 70s with single wall construction. That's one single board. That's your interior and exterior wall. It's redwood tongue and groove planks, right? There is no insulation. And you don't really need it because of the moderate temperature. And it's not until recently that, I use R30 insulation and then radiant barriers and things such as that when I'm doing it now, but that's just for a comfort thing, but it's not necessary. So, there's in some sense, there's less that you have to do than in some places on the mainland. And then you get salt air. Salt air is the big one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other thing is for change in elevation, where I live now is about 700 feet above sea level. It's a town called village. I shouldn't say it's not a town called Waikoloa. I used to live up in Waimea, which goes up to about 2,700 feet elevation. And I lived there for a while. We also had a fireplace. And some winters we would burn that thing a couple times a week. Wood burning fireplace. We burned it a couple times a week. One of the main things that we used to have to do for maintenance is power wash the house because there is more moisture. And, you would get some dirt. Sometimes you'd get the beginnings of moss or mold, whatever so you'd power wash your house. It's a very important thing to do. It's one of the maintenance things to do. You might not have to paint your house as often, but it's important, just like you would wash your car, that you wash that house. So,
yeah, that's interesting because that's, your windward sides of the island typically get the weather that comes in, which brings in the moisture. It hits the mountains, the clouds rise up and release. So the windward sides of the islands typically tend to be our lush green side. And on the other side of that mountain, on the leeward side, it tends to be much drier. And so on the windward sides, I would say, your moisture level is higher. You have to power wash to keep mildew away and at bay. And on the leeward side, you don't have that as much. But we do also have significant bugs, big bugs, centipede, B-52 bombing cockroaches, right? Those suckers are big and they fly. So the tropical climate comes with some bugs that are different that you don't see on the mainland. And the funny thing is people say, I don't want bugs. And it's like, well, you better not move to Hawaii then, because even if you go on a pest treatment plan, you're going to have some. You are not going to eliminate all of them.
Right.
And it's something that we live with, and usually they're not a problem. You can maintain it through a maintenance program, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
But the biggest one is that salt air component and corrosion, right? Man, that salt air corrodes everything. And if you're oceanfront or you're really close to the ocean, if you're not using marine grade materials or materials that can withstand that salt air, it rapidly deteriorates. And I know even just TVs, computers, things such as that, electronics, you're replacing them significantly faster than you are if you're inland more, if you're up at elevation as well.
Yeah, luckily the TVs don't cost as much as they used to.
Yeah,
You get
yeah.
a big old 55-inch screen TV for what, but it is a good point. And the maintenance for that is
More and more expensive, more often and more expensive. I mean, you know, marine grade stainless steel, if you're using that, or,
right.
things such as that, if you're using regular flashing or you're not totally sealed very well, even using galvanized nails and things such as that, you're going to get nail bleeds, rust nail bleeds running
Right.
down. And then your home just starts to look disgusting. And you're probably going to have to paint, because paint is a sealant, right? So you're probably going to have to paint more often, more frequently than the every 8-year kind of estimated cycle that you have. So not only are you doing it more frequently, but it ends up costing more because the materials you need to use closer to the ocean are more expensive, and then you're probably having to address things more frequently.
Yeah. So regardless of what you think, folks, there is some maintenance that is necessary if you own a home in Hawaii. But again, like most things, if you take care and you do it right, then you're going to be good. So
Yep.
let's step on. Okay, so this is a big one. What should I know about Oahu's property tax system before buying a home in Hawaii? Now, just real quickly, when you say Oahu's property tax system, are you strictly talking about Oahu, or are we going to be talking a little bit about the entire state here of Hawaii?
Yeah, I mean, let's start off with that. What's interesting is Hawaii as a state does not have a standardized property tax system for the entire state. It is based on the county, and the county is more or less the different islands. So Maui County, Maui, and I believe it would Molokai
Hawaii.
Lanai fall under that. Big Island is Hawaii Island. Kauai
Right.
is its own county. And Oahu is its own county, or Honolulu County is. And in doing so, each county has its own not only property tax system or property tax rates, but it also has its own land use, its own zoning. They're all different, and that's a part of the reason why you and I work together on things. Is, hey, I stay in my lane. It's hard enough staying on top of the Oahu market and all the things that change.
Right.
You're the expert on the Big Island. I have a client that's looking to buy over there. Hey, guy, here you go, because I can't stay up on that. And it's different, right?
Right. And it's different on your occupancy too, whether you're an owner occupant or you're a part-time resident, the tax rate changes. But and it's
so
some people love to collect information. I remember I had a buyer once. We walked into a house and they were only remotely considering buying a house instead of a condo. So I said, well, let's go look at a few houses. There's an open house over here and there's a couple vacant houses. We went into this house and they had some kind of solar system. And the guy says to the realtor, oh, I'm going to need the information on that solar system. And I pulled him aside and I said, you do not need the information on that solar system unless you intend on buying this house. Do you intend on buying this house? And he said, well, no, but I'm just interested in solar. I said, well, go online. I mean, I told him, I think you don't need that information, right now. So when you do come to Hawaii and you are actually start thinking about it, make looking into the tax system part of your process. I will say this in general. I mean, they do charge non-residents more money if you don't live here full time. But if there's anything that doesn't cost as much in Hawaii in terms of percentage, property tax is one of those things.
Yeah, so I'll break down Oahu's. I'm interested to hear Big Islands because I actually don't remember. Oahu. Do you remember it?
Well, I mean, essentially, I mean, I keep it very simple in terms of, I mean, I kind of take it situation by situation, just because, I don't want to tell one buyer or seller one thing and another one another thing, because there's also the tax of owning a house. There's also the tax of selling a house, which let's not get into that. But
Yeah.
different stuff. It's pretty simple here. I think for you to explain Oahu, I might just at the end of it say, well, so what?
Yeah, so Oahu's tax rate, and I'll just break this down because the question is, what should I know? And so for residential property taxes, if you're going to be an owner occupant, it is three and a half cents per every $1,000 of assessed value. So the simplistic form of understanding that is for every $1 million of assessed value, and that assessed value is determined by the city and county every year, and it adjusts every year. It's $3,500 per every $1 million. So if it's less, you just do the calculation.
So
but
I'm not a math whiz, but is that 3.5%?
It's actually, I think, 0.035%.
Okay.
And then now you would file a home tax exemption. In order to get that property tax rate, you have to file a home tax exemption. And then you actually can get an additional reduction on your property taxes based on that home tax exemption based on your age. I won't get into that, but the basics for primary resident, owner occupant, let's call it, is $3,500 for every $1 million of assessed value. So if it's $2 million, it's $7,000 a year. That's per year, which is some of the lowest in the country from a percentage standpoint. If you're a non-owner occupant, meaning second home, investor, whatever, or you forget to file your home property tax exemption, then it's, let me double check. It's $4 per every $1,000 of assessed value up to $1 million. So $4,000. If your property is assessed at $1 million, it's $4,000. And then once you get above that, it's basically $11.40 per every 1,000. So it significantly jumps. That's $11,400 per year for the second million. And if for the third million, it's another $11,400. So it goes from not too bad to almost tripling once you get above $1 million of assessed value.
Yeah. So in essence, I mean the tax system, obviously, if you're paying more taxes for a house, it's because generally either you're not a resident, but as you say, the value goes up, that you're paying more tax because, your house is worth a lot more and that person or entity is worth a lot more.
Tax the rich, tax the non-Hawaii people.
Yeah, well, and I understand. I'm going to say I understand that. So anyways.
There's even a proposal for a vacant home tax right now that I don't see passing. But
yeah, which you had sent me the article, and I saw that, and those are the types of things that, I mean, there's other issues that we constantly deal with besides that. But okay.
Yep.
Well, good. Let's jump from here. Hey, this is the important one. This extraordinary property of the day, where we give you a look at some Oahu real estate. And I mean, extraordinary is a good word for this because this one actually, it starts out and Scott, this is your Kuleana here, and you're familiar with this property. So obviously the first picture is, pretty stunning. I like, you had one in there where the location was.
It's next.
Not far. Okay. Let's jump over to that real quick. We can always jump back.
Yeah.
Now, that we're going to look at this one. I'm going to go ahead and move this because I looked at it earlier. This shows you the red box where the house is and the access down to the beach, because I wanted to mention to people, and we probably said this before, all of the beaches in Hawaii are public. Whether there's sand there or rock there or whatever, the public has the right, I mean, I want to say up, what is it, the 40, what is the line?
Oh, the mean high water mark or vegetation line?
Yeah. I mean, it's obvious there, but that's how close you are to the ocean. And I wanted people to see that, so that you realize that you may not be oceanfront with this property, but, you're steps
Yes.
away.
So I'm going to jump to this one real
Yeah.
quick, just to give you the lay of the land. So this is in Waimanalo, which is on the windward side of the island. Waimanalo is typically known for its more country setting. So I love this area. Not only is it quiet and peaceful, if you actually go on my YouTube channel, I did a basically bringing pets to Hawaii video with my client on her property. We did an interview. She brought 19 pets to Hawaii, and Hawaii has strict rules for bringing. It's a rabies-free state, so there's very strict rules for bringing pets in. She brought 19 in. And we were set up at the property doing the interview, and I'm sitting there, and it was peace and quiet. You hear the birds. You can actually hear the ocean from the backyard. If you open up the kitchen window in this, you can hear the ocean. It's just an amazing setting. So country setting. This section of this neighborhood, this section of property is called Waimanalo Beach Lots. It's whenever I do my development projects, I go to all the nurseries that are back there, and that's where I get in a golf cart and I drive around and I look at the different plants and trees and things that I want to buy for my development projects. I love it. It's like country, nature setting, more lush. You have a stunning miles of beach right out in front, which is what you see in the foreground. Much more quiet area. But the idea, this home is 3 lots from the ocean. It's 2 lots. Well, it's the 3rd lot from the public access right away to be able to walk down to the ocean. It's 2 homes. It's a single family home and a legal ADU, or accessory dwelling unit, as we call it, both on the property. You got more land here than you get in town. For example, the drive to get to town would be probably about 35-40 minutes in either direction. You can either go Kailua side, or you can go around the way to Hawaii Kai and cut through that way. But you're over 11,000 square feet of land. It's 3,000 square feet of home combined with the 2. You got 4 bedroom, 2.5 bath in the main house with these really big rooms. And then you also have the ADU in the back. So this picture here is the access. You can see you're just right down to the beach access. If you open the kitchen window, you can hear the ocean, and it's a really nice setting. And this is the kitchen here, large kitchen, nice and open. It's a lot of room. All the rooms here, the main kind of entertaining rooms, are connected, and there's a lot of space. So it's great for family gatherings. This is the main living area. And you can see here the kitchen, the dining area, and the main living area right off of each other. We're listed at $3.295 million. This is actually my listing. And then this is the master bedroom, spacious master bedroom.
Very simple. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's board and batten. It's more your plantation style design. I love board and batten. It has that Hawaiiana feel. There's great landscaping. You have dual vanity sinks. There's a huge walk-in shower with the rain shower that comes out from the top. You also have wall shower heads as well. But this is the space between the home, and that picture there you see is the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit. It's a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, about 600 square feet, 650 square feet. So it's comfortable. And then the family can congregate on this kind of patio area in between the 2 houses with the backyard, fully fenced. This is the kitchen and living room space in the ADU. And then you have the bedroom for the ADU as well, which goes out to the backyard. And, another shot at kind of the patio space at sunset or twilight. And then it also has a jacuzzi, and they craned in some trees. They did a ton of professional landscaping, so it's just got that really tropical feel. It's an amazing property. It's great one. You have 2 homes, and then you're just in this quiet country setting with that beach right there. I used to do beach workouts all the time on that beach. It's one of my favorite spots. I love Waimanalo.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And I'll just add this. That beach is for everybody. This house might be 3 lots up from the beach, but you could live completely up the mountain, right? Yep. 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles away, you can be down and use that beach. So I'm just going to mention that is one of the great things about Hawaii, is that that beach enjoyment is open to everyone. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but wow, what a property. Whew. So
Yes.
yeah, I'll be sending you an offer today. No. All right.
So we'll move on to our closing thoughts. And so we're going to wrap things up here, basically, which a couple of different quotes. We'll just kind of talk about them. And I'll go first on my end, but champions do daily what others do occasionally. And you've known me for a long time. I'm a little bit a different breed than a lot of people. My mentality is more get down in the trenches and roll up your sleeves and do whatever work. Don't have any excuses. And I tell the team this all the time. Do your tasks, do them well, do them daily. You have to have the repetition of it. And, it's 10,000 hours of doing your task and doing them the best that you can to master your craft and master what you're doing. And so the idea of this is, hey, it's easy to say, I'm too tired. I don't want to do that today. The discipline comes with working through that and doing it anyway, so that you can be the master of your craft. And that's kind of the mentality that I work with and work on and believe heavily in. And it's, you just got to do it. Being lazy and having excuses doesn't work well. It doesn't sit well with me.
No, that's a good description. That's a good description of you, right? And also, I don't remember if I mentioned this here or to somebody else, but the idea that motivation itself, to me, is rarely precedes action. In other words, you don't just jump out of bed and you're motivated. Whether you're a runner or a realtor or whatever, the stuff you got to do, to me, you've got to get started. And it's, like maybe you're in the first quarter mile of your run, and that's about the time that the motivation starts to kick in. And so people sit around waiting for this feeling of motivation, and it ain't going to come, I think in a lot of times. Right. So I think that's an important part of that is you do need to get started. And as you get started and as you start to see progress, the motivation multiplies. That's been my experience. So,
and then carrying that longevity into daily for years, right, is right. Where you really see the change and the progress on the journey.
Yeah. So, all right. I had to go a little bit of baseball here, and the reason I did was because the Detroit Tigers are, they basically, were below 10 games below 500 for most of the first half of the season. Maybe they'd get up to 8 or 7 under 500. Well, they're on a streak now, like 28 or 29 wins out of the last 38, 39 games. So they are vying for a wild card spot. So I had to pick a quote from the famous Yogi Berra: good hitting will stop good pitching, and vice versa. And the reason I like this quote is it's not just about baseball. It really just like there's always a converse to something, right? Yeah, if you're a good pitcher, you can stop good hitting. Yeah, well, if Shohei Ohtani, one of the best baseball players ever, steps up to the plate, he's a good hitter. He might put that good pitching to rest. So I like that. So there's always a vice versa to something. That's one of my quotes, and that's a Yogi Berra. And the next one, this is a little bit more on the facetious side, would be Little League Baseball is a good thing. This is a Yogi Berra quote. It keeps the parents off the streets. Anyway, Hawaii is a great baseball state. I went through and looked at some of the names this morning of baseball players that come out of Hawaii. I mean, Colton Wong is one that comes to mind. But Hawaii has great Little League programs, not just in baseball, but soccer, basketball. It's still, sports is one of the great venues for children and kids in this state. And just so you know, if you do plan on moving here, there are a lot of access to a lot of good programs for that.
So. Yeah. How many times have you seen Hawaii in the Little League World Series doing well?
Yeah, it's an amazing story. People ask about that when I run into them, and about the Hawaii teams and why are they so good?
Yeah.
Lot of good programs here. So,
Yep. Well, great.
alrighty.
Well, appreciate the time, Guy. Let's
Yep.
we'll switch back here. Appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on. We'll do this again. And for those of you watching, check out the links below. We'll put various links to some of the different topics if you want to learn more about them, or if you have questions, just reach out. But thanks for joining us and thanks for checking in. And we'll catch you on another episode.
Yeah, thanks, and
final
thank you.
thoughts, Guy?
Yeah, just keep up the good work. You can also follow me. I have the Papa Guy podcast, which you can find either on YouTube or you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I have been starting to video some of those podcasts. You can see them on Spotify or YouTube. So, Papa Guy podcast. It's very simple.
Hopefully the next time we do this, I'll be in a different setting. We'll be done. Every week it ends, I'm like, okay, 2 to 3 more weeks on the construction project. And then the next week, 2 to 3 more weeks on the construction project. But I really think now it's 2 to 3 more weeks on the end of the construction project and I'll be able to make the transition. So hopefully we'll have a new setup, but
all right. Well, good luck with that. And I look forward to seeing your new digs.
Yeah. You excited to see me in a new attic? In a spacesuit?
Yeah. Funny picture that was.
I think I lost 5 pounds being in the attic yesterday, just sweating to death, trying to trace cable wires. The cable wasn't connecting right. And so I'm up there in this spacesuit. You can check this out on my social media page. I had a picture of it, but I'm up there in my spacesuit crawling around, having to deal with insulation because we had put insulation in already. I'm having to trace wires. I'm like, oh my God, this is a mess. And I'm just covered in sweat and slipping and sliding out around there because the suit has booties for the feet too. And so when you go to step on like the wood trusses and stuff, your feet slide. You don't have much grip. You don't have the same grip as you do with the shoes. And I was like, this is a lost cause. So after about 15 minutes, I crawled out of there and I probably lost 5 pounds sweating. So.
Well, and so this is the guy who actually gets into the trenches. Seriously. So I've lost about maybe 10 pounds since I started swimming in May. I mean, awesome. I didn't know that I had 10 pounds to lose, but anyways, I kind of, it's a good thing. Anyways.
I think you gave it to me.
Well, you just lost 5 of it. So, all right, my friend, I appreciate it and enjoy being on your Paradise Property podcast. And we'll be back again, folks.
Thanks, Guy. Have a good one.
Luck, man.
Aloha, everybody.
Aloha.